Today we're going to do another low-cost, high-impact costume build, the flight suit. Let's go! Hey, how's it going? Anthony Frog, Create Sci-Fi. So today I'm going to do another one of my kind of quick, inexpensive costume builds. It's for a proof of concept for another film project that I'm working on. But I've always been fascinated with the sort of, like they're in 2001 and recently The Expanse is the flight suit, right? I was always like, yeah, that's like a cool sci-fi costume, inexpensive, kind of standard, right? And it's also like, it's timeless, right? So on Amazon, I got a flight suit. I found like, I tend to, when I want futuristic stuff, if I go on Amazon, and I did this mostly on Amazon, is I look for like European or lots of like Japanese stuff, and I found these boots, right? So these are gonna be the boots. Those are so cool, but they're like closeout because they're weird. They're the wrong color, obviously, but they're like cotton poly. I'm just gonna dye these black, right? So we'll do that. But then the main thing, you know, we have to weather and everything, but on this flight suit, so the main thing is, right, like the badges and the emblems. And I was thinking, you know, how am I gonna do that on a budget? And then I had an aha moment. I printed out, I'll show you a better picture of this, but I printed out a t-shirt, right? So it's very easy now to do these one-off t-shirts. So I did some graphics. I did like a name badge. I did like, okay, this is the badge of the ship or the terminal or whatever it is they work on. And then some like sort of military looking stuff. There's the person's name badge. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut these all out like patches, and then I'm gonna sew them on to the flight suit, weather it, and I think that's gonna be a really good solution. And again, this is one of those projects that excites me because this is not me sharing with you, this is what you do, this is awesome. This is me sharing with you, I had an idea. I think this could be cool. So, I don't know yet. Let's get into it. We're gonna sew on these patches, weather it up, and do like a flight suit. Very exciting. Let's go. All right, let's jump right in with the boots, pardon the pun. These boots were one of those deals when it just really worked out. I was like, wow, these are perfect. And again, of course, nothing's ever like is 100% perfect, right? I was like, oh, these are perfect, but they only have like this closeout camouflage. But I thought, oh, they're fabric, I can dye them, right? So the only real prep I need to do to these is just get rid of any sort of like brand labels or anything that would look sort of out of place or capture your eye. And there was some, you know, hangers on there. I just get out the old lighter. Sometimes fire fixes everything. Be careful and well ventilated. Now just some black fabric dye, and then I also have some black polyester dye. The polyester dye is kind of like a catch-all, and then the black fabric dye I just added just to double down. And you know, these are boots. These are kind of not like, you know, like a sort of delicate piece of clothing. So I put them in those bucket and I put it aside, and I didn't think about it for a couple days. So now I'm making the patches, which I teased in the open. So what I'm doing is I'm doing a graphic design in Photoshop of what I think all my patches should look like, right? So I'm coming up with a character, and then, you know, there's so many of these one-off, there's like Zazzle and Custom Ink I think I use here, where I just made this really weird looking t-shirt, and I think that was like $20-something, right? So did that, good, and then now I have, you know, my patches, right? So what I'm doing here is I'm just cutting out with this special fabric blade, which, you know, I would just use scissors, but sometimes you got to use the right tool, right? Like I think I bought this kit at the fabric store. I don't know, it was like $10, but like it was totally worth it, right? Because I want these to be precise. So I cut these out, and then now here I have my little stack, right? This is my magic stack. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get this batting, right? This like magic hem stuff. And I just want to go ahead and to give them a little more structure, I'm going to fold them over. So I left myself like a little extra space there so I can fold them over. iron them with this sort of self-stick widget. It's got a bunch of names. I don't know the proper name of it. And then to me, that's just going to reinforce it and make it structurally better. I wouldn't, some people use this to put on the patches. I wouldn't trust it to do that. But I think for this, it's kind of like we're doubling down. And I think if we didn't do this step, once you washed it or once it got really weathered, I think the ends would fray, kind of like how your t-shirt, when they get cut, how they kind of curl. And so what I'm trying to do is anticipate that being a problem and sewing that. And then now, right, those look like patches. And again, right tool for the job. That felt pad for ironing, like when you're doing projects like this, is amazing. You could use an ironing board, but the pad is better. So now I'm just figuring out the layout. I'm giving it some thought using a ruler, but I'm not making myself crazy over this. But definitely I learned the hard way in sewing is definitely pin everything down. And I am by no means a master of the sewing. I think if you follow my channel, the few times I've sewn, I've just alluded to the fact that I've sewn. I'm not comfortable showing you sewing because I'm barely hanging on. But this, I figured I'd share because, just sew in a straight line. If you can't do that, well, it's you got a long way to go. So I put that aside and sort of change gears, and I bought these captain's bars, and I'm just going to paint them blue because I want to tell the story that this guy is a captain. The easiest way to do this, even though it's the future, right, is use something that people recognize. So here I have my heavy duty sewing machine. And again, I use this quite a bit. It comes in handy, but it's, like I said, it's something I barely get by on. And I've actually broken it a couple times because I sew too heavy of fabrics lots of times. So here I'm just sewing these on, going as straight as possible. And again, you could hand sew this, but I think the stitching just helps to, we're trying to give the illusion that these are patches, right? So if it was a real patch, if you just bought a bunch of army patches or if you had patches, I think it'd be fine to hand sew them. But I think machine say that 10 times fast. Machine sewing these was important to sell the look, right? And then now I'm just inspecting everything. It looks good. And while this is going on, there's the boots drying. Just put them in the backyard for a couple days like you got thrown into the lake. And then now I was like, I'm going to make some badges. So I'm 3D printing these badges. You can skip this step. I thought it would be a fun little thing. So basically what I did is I designed these like buttons, right? So I figured dystopian future, nothing says dystopian future like barcodes and numbers, right? And then the logo there, that sort of branding logo, that's UCE, the United Corporations of Earth. And I just kind of invented that. And by putting this in little places all over the place, but not in the main focus, people pick up on it, right? So here I just sanded these, and now I'm just using a little isopropyl to get rid of all the dust and the fingerprints. And I'm going to hit these with a base coat of gloss black. And again, you could totally skip this step. I just had it available to me. This was 3D printing like 101, very basic. And like I said, when I designed these badges, you'll see, if you see the holes there, the idea is, those are like buttonholes, right? So now I'm gonna hit this with a gloss black because I'm gonna do a graphite treatment on these because again, low budget, it's the way to go. So now I just bought on Amazon. I just thought, okay, a blue digital camel shirt would be the right choice for this. And I had one more name badge. And, this is like the undershirt, but sometimes I noticed in the shows, especially like The Expanse, sometimes they'll pull down like the jacket part of the jumpsuit and have the t-shirt under there. So I thought this would be a nice little layering thing. And, like I say, lots of times too, if it's stuff you never see, I always think it's just good for the actors, right? So yeah, I think that came out good. It was very basic. Bought a shirt on Amazon. We're going to weather it. But here's like the mock-up, right? You start to say like, all right, this is coming together. My idea, I think, could work. All right, so now this is dried, and all I have here is this is the graphite powder. If you're new here, watch the magic. Boom. I do this treatment quite a bit because it works, right? It's effective, it's inexpensive, and I find it to be very powerful, right? So I posted this on Instagram and people were reaching out to me to how can they get metal badges made. So shout out to Core Geek. So there is the badges. Really happy with the way those looks. And then I bought this like little hat. I was like trying to figure out what kind of like, you know, if this is like a worker or a captain or on a ship, but more of like in a real life maintenance situation, not like sexy, you know, battle uniforms. I was like, oh, it needs like a little cap, like a little bicycle cap, right? So that cap solved that. So now I'm just weathering the costume. You can skip this step. I think it's the most important step. And really, you know, you just want to fray the edges. You know, I focused on like where button snaps are, right? You just, that's where things tend to wear away. And it's just that little peaking of that is just makes it more authentic. And again, those are things you'll never notice, but they add to the subconscious sort of impact of the costume. There's a little fire. Be careful with the fire. Well ventilated. Kids, don't do that. And then here, I'm just really like dinging up this t-shirt, right? And again, it always feels like it's too far, but you got to realize that, you know, I say this all the time, I'm making these for film, right? So it's going to be different lighting. It's not going to be the focal thing. It's going to be people walking by. These are not cosplays where it's like, look at my costume, or walking around all day on a fair. It's a part of a character, part of a component of filmmaking. Now this happened off camera, and I was like, oh, I burned a hole. Let me put a patch and do that. And that came out really good. And I was like, oh, I should have filmed that. So now I'm just taking, like, you know, these are my acrylic paints. I'm just adding them to some water. And I'm just going to do like a little bit of splashing on my costumes. You've probably seen me do this before. Again, to the people that are new here, you know, it'll look like a mess, but it really reads on film very, very well. Yeah, so first I'm going to do some black. And again, this is wet, right? So by the time this dries, the color really softens, it evaporates. And then I'm going to put it in the washing machine and it'll all disappear, right? So now I'm in the 11th hour. I'm like, well, let me make like a little tool for the pocket. So this is just a 3D file I found of like an old, like Doctor Who season 1, 2, 3 sonic screwdriver. And I just got rid of like the really telltale pieces of that. It was like a dish thing. And then I changed the bottom to more of like a knob, and then I'm going to insert our logo in the bottom there. And, you know, I just put this together with super glue. This is just an afterthought. I'm just sharing this with you because I made it. It actually ends up coming out pretty cool. But again, totally necessary. But I'm more trying to get across the point of like all these little details tell the story, right? And these details add up to something that's really cool, really believable. And I find that they're worth it. So here, this is like a mini prop build video within this costume video. Just sanding, got to get rid of those sanding lines. And again, you know, I just printed this in like a couple hours. And my whole purpose is just to have it, you know, stick it in the pocket. Then now I always take a really fine steel wool as sort of my last pass. And the reason for doing that is I find that it's sort of a catch-all, like if I missed any spot. And then now with the isopropyl, get rid of the fingerprints, get rid of any like residue or dust that's sort of in the cracks and crevices. And now I'm going to hit this with a base coat. And then there's the stuff. I leave that overnight drying. I typically do that just so that it has like a little bit of a real world experience. Doesn't make sense, but I don't know. I got OCD. I do that all the time. So now we're going to wash them. So a lot of that heavy weathering will go away because it's just acrylic water-based paint and it just softens everything up. So now I have a blue base coat on this tool, on the sonic screwdriver. And I'm just masking off some of these rings. And again, you know, this is just kind of meditative side work because, you know, in the background, things are drying, taking a break, switching gears. And, you know, because I was doing that as a side thing, it's going to end up coming out pretty good. So that's drying now, right? The machine's rolling. this stuff's out of the dryer. It's like, let me add these badges. So these badges, I didn't want to weather and sort of wash them with these, plastic badges that are painted and have graphite on them, which I think makes sense. But, I'm just sewing them on here. This is old school hand stitching. It's a little tedious, but, with all this stuff, it's like you gotta keep your eye on the prize, because it's like, it's a pain, but it's really, once you're done, you're glad you did it, because it really sells the whole thing, right? Takes it to that next level. It just adds a visual element where it's like you have the badges, you have the patch that has a little bit of a shine to that. That'll catch the light. And, barcodes and numbers. It's the future. Things are not good. And here's the captain's bars. And, I just looked online. How do you put these on? I probably did it wrong, but then once I get the comments, I will fix it. And again, this is just like, even though it's the future, I want to use something now, because when you're telling the story, people will be like, okay, that's a captain. So now I'm just doing some little last minute touches. I always do the bloody finger, right? So just do these little, I just find adding these little splotches of color really kick it off on film. You don't go overboard with it. Just little, almost where you think, I've found through experience that where I feel like, oh, that's not even going to matter. But something when you film it and then the camera captures it, and then you start doing color corrections, it's interesting what things will pop, So now I'm just putting this badge on this hat. So this is now just some stupid little cap that I got on Amazon, but now we weathered it, and by putting this badge on it, now it's like, it tells the story. It's part of this costume, right? This is standard issue cap that they all wear. And, you could take it or leave it, right? This was just, once you start sort of going down the rabbit hole, you start thinking, oh, this will be good. Now, this is off camera. Now, I'll link to it. A couple of months ago, I did a blaster, a Nerf modification that was part of this costume build, right? So I already have that. I'll link to it. And then this, I didn't feature it in the description or anything, because I just bought a holster off of Amazon. I just Googled, did some research of, because Nerf is such a huge thing, like what holsters work on the Nerf. So I found this one. It's like a tactical holster. The Nerf gun fits in this fine. And now I'm just weathering this up because, well, you have to, otherwise it'll look weird. And then, this is a good moment to reinforce my thing about the random colors. So here's just some gold, and I'm just going to do some little bits of gold on here. Wipe it off till it's almost gone. And then you'll see that it just really pops. It really brings the whole thing together, like there on the buckle. And then now I'm going to dry it because, like I said, this was just a side thing, not a main not a main course. And I just want to get some Fuller's Earth on this. So Fuller's Earth is dirt that you use in film production. I'm just going to dust this up. And again, this stuff is all heavy-handed. But, what I've learned is, I'll put this on here, and now I'm just going to put this aside. And it's probably going to sit in the corner for a month before I actually move it. So a lot of dust will come off, and it'll get like a real life sort of feel to it. Now, if I was filming tomorrow with this, then I would take more care. But the other way that I just described is not lazy. It's actually you get a good result. So now, right, now that you're all initiated into the alchemy of the graphite powder, it's like, that's why I'm making this hand prop, because it was almost like, well, I have to do this. This will be easy, right? It took me 3 hours to print that, which it printed in the background while I was doing other stuff. And then each coat of paint was in between things that I was doing. So now the magic part is when you unmask it. And I shared on Instagram when I was building this, like, this is maybe one of the nicest, coolest little props that I've ever made. And it was totally aside. And I find that happens to me a lot. Like, I didn't know I was going to make this. I wasn't focused on this. I just kind of made it in a hurry. But, like, I made sure to do it in a way that I knew how to do it, if that makes sense. And it came out really good. So, yeah. All right. So now let's take a look at some beauty shots. And it's, you know, it's all together. This is a costume. This is a character. Even on the mannequin, right? It's like, that's a character. Didn't weather up the boots because I'm still not sure what I'm doing with those yet. But the dyes came out great. So yeah, very, very happy with this. I hope you get some inspiration out of this. Right? Pretty straightforward, right? It's the simple that complicates. This is really cool. Really happy with this. And I think it's a good example of no low budget, right? I talk a lot about low, no budget. I'm always building, you know, kind of extreme things. This is very basic. This is, you could do this whole thing on online shopping, right? Amazon, the little details. This was like a side thing, very happy with that. Patches worked out. Got a little patch on here. Sometimes they pull the tops down on these. Right? Just very, very cool. This can be a whole film, right? Some guy, now, you know, the hat I added because I knew I was gonna wear this. So, you know, I got gross hair, beard, little hat. You don't need the hat, you can use the hat. Different kind of hat. You don't see because of my hair, but it's like captain's bars, telling a story. It's the future, but touchstones in the real world, right? This guy's a captain. Gotta fix something. Right? I'm very happy with this. Oh yeah. Yes, sir. Well, as always, I hope you found this video useful. Please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. Love to read the comments. And be sure to check out the merch shop. I got Create Sci-Fi hats, t-shirts, all kinds of stuff in there. If you support the channel by buying that stuff, it really helps. Take a look. And remember, I'm just here to help make sci-fi.